Hello, all. Welcome to the end of August, the last Monday in August, getting ourselves closer and closer to September every day. It's good to see you all here. Always happy to join everybody on a Monday. This will make my Monday feel better somehow. I just know it will. So I'm excited for that. And just because I was so ill prepared last week, I'm extra prepared today with 3 separate questions to ask the group. I take it back, 4 questions to ask the group if I need to. So I'm really excited about my level of preparation today. But how are all of you? What's good? What's a good thing that's happening?
Hey, Mike.
Hi, Karen. I say a good thing and look what happens. Kelly and Karen just pop on the screen. If it doesn't get any better than that.
Thanks for the reminder. I just would not have remembered.
That's Alyssa tells me I should remind people. So that's easy enough. I'll just remind
people. Where's Alyssa?
Exactly. So why am I reminding her if she's not going to come? That's all right.
How's everybody? Anyone near Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama?
Yeah, is anybody near there? I don't think so. Just looking at our list.
Thank goodness, no. Actually, they probably would not have been able to join us. There's no power down there.
Hey, Karen, have you heard from Mads? Has she checked in?
No, but I imagine she left if she was down there.
I hope so. The last time I heard from her last week, she was there. So
yeah, no, I'm sure she would not have stayed around.
I don't think
category 4.
Yeah, just didn't know if you heard from her.
Yeah, she probably maybe posted on Facebook. I don't know.
Karen, that gives you a job to do later today, Karen.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome. So
you have some questions for us?
I do. Look at them all. One of them, Karen, is totally self-serving. It says brainstorm topics for AT chat.
Yay.
So completely self-serving for me and you, but I'll put that out there. If you guys think of it as you're going, throw it in the chat if you want to, if you have an idea for an AT chat topic. Suggesting a topic does not automatically make you the leader of the conversation. We strongly encourage you to lead that in conversation, but you don't have to lead. But if you have an idea, drop it in there.
Another self-serving option. How about this one, Mike? If you have had a chance to look at Inclusive Learning 365, we would love it if you, our new book, we would love it if you would leave an Amazon review. And the thing we're hoping is right now there it seems to be a leaning towards special educators or AT specialists, but we really want to make sure that all educators get their hands on this book. This is a book for all educators.
Nice, Karen. That one was even more self-serving than the AT chat. Now I'm here for it, by the way. That's fine. I think it's okay. All right. Here's some thoughts. And I thought about this last week because, we started and then we didn't really dive into this, this idea of, was there something you reflected on over the summer that you're excited to implement this year now that you're kind of back for the next school year? I'm just curious if anybody had one of those opportunities.
Say that again. I was reading the chat.
Oh boy, like self-reflection. If you took some time over the summer to reflect and think about how you might change your service, what's one thing you're excited to try this year or to implement as you go forward with your service delivery this year?
I think one of the things that forced us last year was to move everything to virtual. So it was, I would consider an experimental year. And I think through that, you figured out what works. So this year, I think we're going to fine tune, the things that did work. I think I've mentioned that I found the virtual training, I had actually better participation than the face-to-face. I had a lot more people who said that it was beneficial because they spent more time working as teams within their district. So we had about, I want to say 35 districts participating. Each one had a 6-person team. And so since they didn't have to drive, they felt less fatigued and they had district leaders that actually participated in the meetings with them. So more people could kind of stay engaged with the communication between them. So this year, I think the reflections were just really taking the information, the input from the people who participated, and looking at next year's training on how we can apply that to make it even better. So it's really, I think last year, like I said, we were thrown into it, but this year we're going to fine tune and really make it better. And now we've got a better plan. It's not just a knee-jerk reaction. And that planning, I think, is going to be huge, I hope.
Yeah, I think so, Shen. It's interesting. I had said to the group last week, I had done my first live training, and I realized I had been so conditioned to do virtual training over the past year that I struggled a bit to do a live presentation. I was expecting different kinds of participation, and I think I was approaching it how I would approach a virtual session instead of a live session, and it was just an interesting moment to reflect on the differences and how we have just kind of fundamentally changed the way we do things, which is interesting.
It would be interesting to hear anyone else who's also done some live trainings. What, besides you, Mike, and including you, Mike, what are the differences? I mean, it seems like a different head approach. I mean, so what were some of the differences?
It was kind of a different approach, and I think I had gotten into a rhythm of having these multiple screens in front of me and popping back and forth and being able to instantly kind of shift gears a bit while engaging people in a chat or bringing them into it. You know, Shannon mentioned that idea of people participating virtually and having the chat there, that they can kind of feel this path towards participation that feels maybe less of an ask than a live training where you're kind of in front of them and there is this kind of, you actually see a panic maybe wash over people, like, oh my God, he's going to call on me. What am I going to do? He's staring at me right now. And I think that, you know, that's different in a virtual, and it gives people a little easier entryway into participation.
I felt, go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead, Sen. Go ahead, Shannon.
I felt that we'd use a lot of the Bob Pike procedures, you know, in the timing.
Mhm.
And when you just throw people into the breakout room, it cuts out, well, first off, they don't have the side conversations. So there's a lot of side conversations that you have to transition from when you go into your activities face to face. But I think there's almost like a craving for some of that conversation. So when you put them in the breakout room, and we typically have our participants keep their cameras on, you can see on their faces the engagement that they have, like there's smiles on their faces when they come back. Whereas I felt it when we were face to face, it was almost like herding cats, because there's people who know each other from different districts. And so you do a little bit more herding on the face to face. That's just what I find.
Yeah, it was different, right? I think I had mentioned last week too that this clearly was the first live thing many people had gone to in this group. So there was a bit of a discomfort in the room of how to just physically be in the room with a bunch of other people. And you could feel that weighing on people. I mean, I had just the same effect. I realized I was like right up on someone as they were sitting at their desk, and I actually saw the person kind of physically back up a little in their chair, and I was like, oh man, I'm kind of in their space right now. Let me move myself over. And I kind of shuffled over with my laptop. And it was just different. It was interesting. Something to think about that, you know, I think as I had gone to it, I said, oh, this will be fine. It's, you know, I had a classic, and any of you who have seen me at a conference will know this is exactly how I approach things. I'm like, that's 45 minutes. I could do that. Let's go. This will be great. And then I got in the car. I was like, no, that wasn't so great. And I'm not happy. And so that was interesting. It was just interesting, to say the least. What about you, Karen? You're in and out of schools.
Not yet. No schools have opened up yet.
Okay.
Some will start on Wednesday, some start next week. No one has asked us to do any professional development beforehand. So, I mean, yeah, so far everything will still continue to be virtual. So it is interesting to hear what people are encountering.
Yeah, and I see the comments in the chat, Andrea and Irene. You know, that idea, Andrea has like live training and only 10% of the people bring their stuff. Is that the thought of they wanted to be washed free of their stuff because they weren't virtual anymore, right? Like where was that? And I could tell you in this session I was in, almost no one had anything, almost zero. People had their phones, but besides that, they didn't have laptops, they didn't have iPads. They didn't come ready to browse and ready to be on technology, which I think is probably fine for the session we were in. If I would have approached it differently from how I did, I think if it could have been more conversational, which I did shift gears and do it that way. And that was better. It gave people that chance to do exactly what Shannon said, that idea of, you know, make it like a breakout room. And I think you're right. I think breakout rooms now, you drop people in them, and that first 5 or 6 minutes is just nonsense talking. And I mean that in the best possible way. It's just interacting with each other, and that's okay. And so, you know, and I think when I drop people in breakout rooms now, I'm accounting for that 5 minutes, whether it happens in the beginning or at the end. Give them that time to just have a conversation about whatever they want, maybe not related to our topic, which is okay. And Irene pointed out that people's space has changed.
What do you, Irene, what do you mean by that? That you need, where you need to stand when live is different? What, I'm curious what you mean by that.
I'm saying that people don't want to be as close as they used to. You used to, remember, do little exercises about how far apart you should stand, and you do it arm's length apart. If you're an arm's length apart from somebody now, they tend to be more uncomfortable. You'll notice like little, or there are some people who even if people who are willing to hug, you see that hesitation before they make their step forward. So I would think as we're presenting and we start walking up to people, we may find that we're getting kind of that reaction that Mike had sooner, because there's almost a fear of human contact.
Yeah, I agree. Irina, it's almost like you were there standing next to us, because someone came in who I know quite well. And we went to say hi to each other, and he stuck his hand out to shake my hand and then pulled it back instantly and then put it back out again. And it was this weird kind of back and forth. And then I had to say, no, I'm okay with that, if you're okay with that. And we had this weird kind of interaction where ultimately we shook hands. It was probably the most awkward shake you've ever seen in your life, but that made it partly funny too. That was okay. But yeah, I think there is that different way we have to approach the people's spaces. I think that is really interesting. I see Kelly put interesting.
And
Go ahead.
I think there's an effect on our moods and things, because hugging and, shaking hands, those things all shoot off endorphins. They make us happier people. And so what we're kind of saying is we're not really leaning into our happiness anymore. We have to be careful with it. I don't know. I think.
It's interesting. Brian, hand sanitizer is the new fidgets of a live presentation. Yeah, I agree. They did give us all hand sanitizer in our little bags as we came in, which I thought was great. I got all these kinds of free things that now live in my car just to have backup stuff. And then Kelly comments that it's almost as people have forgotten what they learned to do during virtual training. They didn't learn to search while presenters talked. Yeah, like
if they learned to do that. I find that some people were doing other work while they were listening to webinars, and then some others were looking up everything that somebody would post. I was constantly copying and pasting. Like at ATIA, the sessions that I monitored, if the presenters said a site or gave a site, even though it might have been in the handout and linked, not everybody was in that handout at the time. So I was constantly putting things in the chat for people to click and go, and maybe not as many people do that as some of us do.
Yeah, right. It made me remember. I mean, we had to take a detour because I shared a bit.ly and someone, and I'm glad she did. She said, "What the hell is a bit.ly?" And I said, oh, thank God that you stopped me. This is great. And then we had this little conversation. But it was fun. It made me remember that, not everybody attends these virtual sessions with that same kind of interactive plan like Kelly just described. You're right. I'm constantly posting things in a chat and doing all kinds of other things. But maybe a lot of people aren't. Maybe they're just sitting hands down, just straight ahead. It is interesting for sure.
So anyone who's already gone back to the learners are back in school, how has that been? I mean, we still haven't encountered that here in Massachusetts, so I'm just wondering, what's it been like for the kids?
I know my friends who are parents are thrilled that their kids are going back. I know it's really been hard on some of the work from home parents trying to parent and work. So most of the people I know are really excited to have the kids back, and there are several districts, and every district does their own thing in Texas. Some have masks, some have no masks, some have distancing, some they don't think it's as well done, but the global feedback is been very positive.
Except for when your kid gets quarantined 8 days into school.
There.
Yeah,
Welcome to the other side of the coin, right, Sarah?
yeah,
ahead,
that's
Kelly.
been really stressful. Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, kids are excited to be back in school, but I'm sure you guys have heard in the news. I mean, it's a fiasco here in Texas. And I think for me as the AT specialist for my school district, I've been spending a lot of time with my students who are deaf or hard of hearing in the classroom, because they're back in the classroom for live instruction, but a lot of their teachers are wearing masks. And so really trying to problem solve closed captioning in that setting, and working closely with our teacher for the deaf and hard of hearing to just really make that environment accessible to those students. So that's been tough.
Yeah. What's some of the strategies you guys are starting to put in place beyond captioning or using, speech to text?
Well, we've definitely got all of their hearing AT in place, their FM systems. And then, we've been utilizing some technology that we were using during virtual. We had gone to using a company named REV. They're out of Austin, Texas. And so even though we're offering virtual for a very small portion of our students, we're using Rev on Zoom, and we can just send a hyperlink to the web page so that the student can follow along on their computer, the live captioning. It's pretty accurate, and that's been a nice turnaround. That's not for a workaround. It's not really what Rev had intended. It was for those virtual meetings, but we're using it for live instruction. Other than that, just some of those strategies to make sure just simple things like teachers are putting into place those best practices facing the student, trying to make available all of in digital format, everything they're presenting. So
it is interesting. I wonder, that, you see that idea of the masks with the clear windows in the front and those kinds of supports that people put in place. I wonder, is it appropriate in some of those situations for a teacher to be maskless, and is that going to be against policy? Right. I'm just trying to think. The simplest solution appears to be take the mask off and eliminate the barrier, but clearly that's not just as simple as that. But I wonder,
you're right.
Is that what they do at times?
No, we really we want to ensure that teachers feel like if they need to and want to have a mask on. We have those clear masks, but they fog up.
Yeah.
And I think teachers are more willing to take off the mask as long as they're up at the front and socially distanced from the students. Because that's a lot of our students are great lip readers, and so that's another way for them to to get that information. I don't know, it's tough.
Yeah, it is tough. And you know, and you wonder, you know, where your rules are depending on your school. Is that even an option, or is that not even something that's an option to talk about? So it's just another level of.
Mike,
Yeah, go ahead.
last year, I historically have always been the word caller for a spelling bee at one of our Title I campuses.
It's fun.
I will
Just
only
as an
admit,
aside, that's fun. But go ahead.
it is fun, but last year when I did it, and that was last December, I was quite impressed because, of course, I was up on the podium and I'm calling out multisyllabic words that are hard to pronounce, and they have to listen. So I was able to, and they had everything, this was even last December, and the kids are spelling these and they need to be clear because you need to differentiate between a P and a B. And you know, so it was very tricky. They handled it very well. They had the seats distanced the right amount. They had the judges on one side so that they're facing the kids and they were distanced. And then I was on the podium up, and then we had, of course, the speakers. And I think, you know, when I've gone into campuses, they're doing a really good job of being conscientious about what the current requirements are, and they're doing the best that they can. I really see a lot of good things happening in schools when I do get a chance to talk or see or visit. I mean, they're far and few between, but when I do, I'm pretty amazed at how they're pulling it all together.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely amazing as we think about all of the pivots and changes in directions and kind of figuring things out on the fly. Yeah, it's impressive for sure.
And I've got some kids that I didn't think would be capable of wearing masks, and they've got them wearing masks. But there's other situations where I've got a student who's got a lot of saliva, and so there's just no way this student can, and they're being respectful for those differences. And I think that's really important because, you know, there are some situations. I had one student that was attacked by a parent in a by someone in a grocery store. The student was 15 with the parent and was attacked by an adult. And this was a student with severe autism that we had done a lot of backwards chaining to get this child into that grocery store and follow a certain routine so that this parent could shop. And it was very traumatic for the family in regards to that, because this is truly a student that looks typical until you mess with his routine.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I give a lot of credit to the teachers, because I really think that they're trying to get some of the kids. And then there are certain parents that want their children to wear masks at school, and they're trying to honor those requests. And then there's other parents that don't want their children to wear masks. So you're really trying to, you know, honor that personal choice. And I think I give them a lot of kudos for doing that. It's hard. I couldn't imagine being a teacher right now.
Yeah. I would think, yeah, it is. That's so interesting. Just the experiences that we're having to kind of work through right now are interesting. I do want to hit something in the chat. I saw Brian ask a question in the chat, which I thought was really good, that we've gotten so used to, in this world of being virtual, we've gotten so used to the chat and the back channel that now when we get to a live event of some kind, whatever that is, we miss that. I felt I was missing that when I was at this live training, and I'm curious, and, you know, Brian says, you know, our new kind of thing we're searching for is the back channel for a live event. And so what have people used? Have you used anything? I saw Cassie put something, but I didn't read it. Sorry, Cassie. Yeah. Finding ways for both the whole group and small group, those side conversations. And you know, if we have to go back to passing notes, so be it. But I'm just curious, you know, what we can do. You know, there used to be Today's Meet that we would use. I like Yo Teach, is very similar to Today's Meet, and so you can still use that. That works pretty well.
I like those. My only concern that I'm having as a presenter when I'm doing these things is I have to remember to stop looking at the people in front of me and look at the device to look at those side things. Like right now, I'm looking at all of you, but I have the chat right next to it. And I have yet to find a program that runs it right alongside my participants' heads while I'm live presenting. So I mean, I have to like stop and kind of go look. So I don't know if I need to bring a secondary screen that I can set up front so I can kind of glance at it, or, you know, have notifications come up on my phone when I'm wandering the room. I don't know yet, but like,
Yeah.
that's hard to figure out.
It is. Cassie, I have done that before. I have taken my iPad and have it be scrolling with the back channel, and it's been pushed to the side of my computer. And so I have kind of tried to create this little 2-screen experience up in my presentation. That doesn't help if you're moving around the room, but as I've learned, maybe I shouldn't be moving around the room anyway, because I start to freak people out. So maybe I should just be standing still anyway. I
I'm
don't
not
do
good
well.
at standing still, so that's going to be rough.
Yeah, I don't do well standing still. I need to be moving a little bit, so that's going to be trouble. But yeah, I think those are interesting, thinking about where to put things. I also had this debate, do I replicate the screen? Because I'm also doing the same thing that Cassie just described, is I have you guys in the middle of my screen, and I have the chat and the participant list alongside of it. So I have this kind of 3-box system happening here. Would it be interesting to present it that way, or is that just too much for people? In a presentation, is that too much? Maybe not obviously not a participant list, but like a content piece and a back channel in the same presentation space.
I feel like the words might get kind of small. My
Yeah.
other thing, I'm wondering, it'd be really interesting to see if people participate in the chat as much. Because I feel like part of the chat in a session like this is you kind of almost feel anonymity, even
Yeah.
though you all know my name. If I write it in chat, you know it's me. But in a
Right.
group, you kind of feel like everybody's going to turn and look at you.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you just asked for that?
Yeah. Yeah. Unless you're in a group that's fairly anonymous anyway. I'm thinking about the training I was in the other day. I knew one person in the room. So any other name would have had that level of anonymity. I wouldn't have known that. There you go. I wouldn't
But
have
I
known those
think
people.
that whole issue of participation for educators and learners is such an interesting one. What causes people to participate and what causes them to be on the sidelines? And I mean, we've done a lot of talking about that. There is many reasons why people don't participate, and we always want to encourage it. And I think that whole anonymity part does help. But Mike, when you're offering professional learning to a school district, so they
Mhm.
all may know each other,
Right.
are they more likely to participate? It's the same people tend to participate, right?
Yes.
So, and, so the other thing is maybe acknowledge the lack of back channel and give people, just talk in your small groups and let's regroup, just try to do those breakout rooms, but in person. Because everybody has something to contribute.
Right.
And so providing the environment that encourages that and promotes that is really our challenge when we are the ones leading and facilitating a session.
I do like the
Okay.
idea of a Google Doc
Oh, wait,
to do that.
Brian.
I know. I saw Brian
his
come on and I was
presence,
getting
his
ready.
presence.
I was going to acknowledge. Go, Brian. Hello.
Yeah, I just think we need to be careful that how we define what participation is, because a lot of times when we're in face-to-face, we define participation by external communication. And some of the things that the back channel has afforded people is people who tend not to put themselves out there, who tend to be those more reflective individuals. It gives them an opportunity to contribute in a way that isn't quite so extroverted and to use that term. And so, thinking through, one of the things that I've seen in my own children and some of the things that I've heard teachers report is they're having people participate in these online sessions that they've never seen participate in the class, because it gives them a less threatening way to participate.
Right.
And so if there's a way to do that as we move to face-to-face or as we're moving back to face-to-face classrooms, it gives that whole other level and whole other opportunity for learners to become engaged.
Yeah, to put a bow on Brian's point there, which I thought was really interesting in our session, is that I tend to give people a Google Doc that's open and everybody can edit it and just drop notes in as we go. That way they have a space to kind of centrally put resources and notes. And in this session where I had, as Karen would point out, maybe like 3 people that were overly sherry. One person I would maybe call too overly sherry, but that sounds about right, right? You get people that are all on the spectrum there of sharing. And I had a couple people that were verbal, but I had a lot of people who were head nodders and they seemed engaged, and we went from there. We got to the end of the session and I reminded people again, like, don't forget, I gave you that link in the beginning to go to that Google Doc. It has the link to the slides and it has some extra resources. And I had said to them without even pulling it up, because again, I'm knee deep in the presentation piece of it. I said to the group, hopefully people have added notes to our group note part in the Google Doc. And we opened it up at the very end to look. And don't you know, there was a ton of notes there, which was awesome. And what really made it stick about these different levels and different ways to participate was one of the more verbal people in the group saw that on the screen and said, oh my God, I would have never added anything in there and I would have forgotten everything. So whoever did that, thank you. Because now I have all this all these resources. And I thought it did provide kind of a back channel, but it gave people an opportunity, and people were dropping in resources they knew. People were adding in examples of how they had used stuff in their classroom, like and putting it in there just like we are in the chat, which I thought was really interesting. Like there was a comment in there that just said, speaking of Flipgrid, and then they went into this whole conversation. And I was like, oh, that really sounds like the chat, which is awesome, because they took that in real time and just added it to this document that we all had access to. So I thought that was really great and exciting.
And Kelly mentioned that she uses Padlet or Today's Meet. One of the things that's really nice about Padlet is people can add comments to each other's comments so that you don't get lost in that scrolling nightmare. And so that I like that idea, Kelly. How has it worked for you? What's the difference? What do you see in terms of people participating in it between Today's Meet or Padlet?
First of all, it's Mike's idea. So
Woohoo!
throw it to
I
him.
gotta feel like I stole it from somebody else, so don't give any credit.
I think the issue with Today's Meet is that there's no organization to it, right?
Right.
There's the question that
Right.
gets thrown out and then it just scrolls and scrolls and
Yeah.
scrolls.
Yeah.
Where when we started using Padlet, then as long like we preset a couple of topics, but then we did find, I think last year, Brian, wasn't, or 2 years ago now, people added their own topic. And as we went into different, it was during a 2-day presentation, live presentation. And I think it went back and forth. There were some activities that we created that specifically were for people to respond in Padlet. So they had to go there to respond to that activity. So it wasn't just like it was open-ended the entire 2 days. So I think that intermittent throwing them back to it helped. And I think just the same as other responses have been here on this discussion, there are people that added continuously. One of the nice things about having multiple presenters is that one of us could always be keeping our eye on it and keeping it going. And that was always a boon for Today's Meet as well, as long as you had somebody on the presentation team. And that's what I've been doing with chat. You know, when there's more than one presenter, you know, then the other presenter keeps the chat going with webinars.
Yeah. Or brings the chat back into the front channel. Like, oh, we had a great conversation in the chat. And if you haven't seen it, here's kind of the gist of it, of what we were talking about. Like Jennifer just dropped in the comment about Slido, and Lori said, can you tell us more? And now we're all going to stare at Jennifer until she turns her microphone on.
Yeah, I'm really thinking about this idea of how to get this going during live presentations.
Yeah, I think it's really, I think it's so interesting, these thought processes. Go ahead, Jennifer. Sorry. I saw you lean forward. I saw you were coming.
Yeah, I had to unmute. I think I heard about Slido, Mike, from your podcast a couple of years ago. You used it and mentioned it, and then I started using it and putting it in my presentations. But I like it because when you're in present mode, it just pops up and it gives people a code, and they can go to the website, or they can go to have the app on their phone. They just type in the code, and every time I've used it, it seems really reliable. But there's also a Q&A feature, so people can ask questions right within that same code. And I think you get maybe 3 for free, but you can keep deleting them. So after you use them, you can delete them and then, make a new one. So
Way to
it's
work the
nice.
system. That's
So it's nice because again, it's free. But I like how when you do those polls, then and they will do like Wordles and all sorts of different things, options that you have, it pulls it right up in your presentation right away. So it's just been one that I've used. I think I saw a couple, seen recently a few other people present using it. So it's, I think, become more popular. But the Q&A, like you can't save it, like within like a Zoom chat, you can save all of those resources that got thrown in, and I have not figured out a way to save it in Slido. So I think that's the other thing, using things like Padlet is nice because you can always go back to those resources, and that's valuable in and of itself. So you don't end up with 10 million tabs open and trying to, remember where the resources that you want to find eventually.
right. And I like the idea, and I've gotten more into Padlet lately because I like the idea of kind of laying that out and having this kind of almost like a centralized place where people can go back to, similar to almost like a Google site in a sense, but I can have the documents there. I can have the slides there. I can pre-populate some questions in some columns that spark conversation, but then have just these open columns that people can add whatever they want in. And the fact, I think Karen said it in a comment in the chat. If not, I apologize to whoever said it. But you can respond in multiple ways too, which I think is huge. Maybe not during a session, but I like that idea of people being able to just record their voice or a video and drop it in there. And I think those become really nice. I love that idea. And if you have it in some kind of space like a Padlet, what I found, going back to Brian's comment from before, is that if people have that Padlet link, it never fails that those responses grow after the session. People go back and they revisit it and they drop other things in there. People that didn't leave anything before will drop comments in there. So it is a really nice way that it allows you to have it grow. I found when I'm doing some online trainings that are longer than one session, I'm using Padlet as our landing site and putting things there and just adding to it. And then that just grows over time. But what it gave you is one simple kind of singular spot to go back to get everything. And I like that idea. Oh, Alyssa's here and she drops in a wake. Wow, she comes in hot with a wakelet comment. Nice. Yes.
Sorry, I'm in my car because I just left doing a swallowing and feeding training. So I popped in late. But yeah, I had to come in with Wakelet. They've added the ability for you to comment on items.
Okay.
So I've used that in similar way that you could use kind of the comment or the thread section in a Padlet that people can thumbs up, thumbs down, and comment on items that you add to the Wakelet.
That's great.
I haven't checked, Alyssa. Have they added audio comments as well and video comments?
That is a great question. And if it's not there now, I know that there's been talk of it coming.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's so great that Padlet added it. So I am sure Wakelet will as well.
Yeah, I would think so too. Yeah.
Great to have you here.
Use that Padlet strategy, just like Jennifer said for Slido, is, you get those handful of Padlets, just keep reusing them.
Yeah.
What I've done in the past is taken the information people shared on a Padlet and put it into some other document to reshare with the group if I'm going to remake the Padlet. Luckily, I had enough Padlets that I'm not remaking them right away, which is great. Not to brag, but I had like almost 100 Padlets. Show off? I think so. But now I'm working through the ones from like 2016 that I don't use anymore and just remake.
Major show off.
That's right. That was just a little taste of me showing off. You're welcome.
I thought I was doing good at like 36. So now I'm feeling like, wow, I missed the boat here.
What you guys are hearing is if we do
Way
presentations
to make her feel
together,
inferior. Yeah, way to make
Yep.
her feel inferior. Good job,
Yeah.
Mike.
Yep. Welcome to the town hall, everyone.
I have 93. So you have more
Yeah.
than that, Mike?
I do. I think it's 98.
Oh,
I'll look. It's like right there. It's right under 100. I'll look to confirm, Karen. And if you're the champion, I will acquiesce and give you that title.
no, I bow to you.
That's really not necessary.
I agree with the comment in the chat that you should convert your Padlet to Wakelets instead of deleting them and putting them in something else. And then you could reuse the Padlet if you want that version, or you could link the Padlet in the Wakelet.
I could, but then I'm going to take that Padlet and remake it into something else. But yeah, I get what you're saying though. That's actually a really good idea. I don't do. Oh, Brian, look at you. Swoops in at 172. All cool, like nice.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All
And
right,
Why
I'll admit,
couldn't you recreate?
Brian, you win.
he does win.
Why couldn't you recreate the Padlet formatting in a Google Doc and just leave it open to edit instead of having to redo Padlets?
Yeah, what I had thought to do, but I don't like all of the options that I can put things in there. I thought about remaking the Padlets into Jamboards and have each page be kind of what would be a column and just go from there. But again, you don't get a chance to put a lot in. You can't.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't, nothing beats the Padlet and its interactive kind of options there. It's just got so many choices. Yeah, and Jennifer points out the accessibility piece too. I don't know the level of accessibility for a Padlet once we start dropping in all those other kinds of content. I don't know if anybody's ever done any kind of looking around at that and exploring.
I think Wendy has done accessibility checks on both Padlet and Wakelet, but I would have to go back and find where she posted it on Twitter to be able to, yeah, I mean, it would be a concern, do those videos that are dropped in get ability for auto captioning? And if you're using Chrome, you could use those Chrome auto captions, but natively, I don't think that they do.
I don't think so either. So yeah, you're automatically going to have that kind of issue there. You're right. I mean, if you're in the browser, you'll get the auto captions, which will give you some level of accessibility. But yeah, that's always my concern, giving people those options to drop in audio and video. And what does that look like? If you're in the Edge browser, I don't know. Can you get auto captions in the Edge browser? It's so weird. The Edge browser is built on a Chrome platform. Oh, now I'm going to lose. You're going to lose me for a minute. I'm going to stare off into space for a second.
Hillary, captions captain, do you know?
Hillary.
Hi. Oh, geez. I'll avoid the yes, no. Can you repeat the question, please? Because I was doing something else.
If you're using, that's okay. That's fine. If you're using the Edge browser, can you do things like auto captions in the browser?
That's a good question, Mike. I'm not entirely sure. I do know that in Chrome you can, but I wonder if that's something that I could just instantly Google and find out for you.
It's interesting. I'd be curious. And if you can, Shannon, I wonder if there's some kind of potential for that to happen soon, because like I said, it's built on it's built on the same platform that Chrome is built on, that Chromium kind of platform, the Edge browser. And so it does have extensions and it does have those abilities.
I guess if it's going to work with anything, it would be in combination with like an immersive reader add-on, maybe?
Possibly, but does Windows accessibility natively have, like similar to live caption in Chrome, does Windows native ease of access have I see that they have a caption settings, like changing your closed caption settings, how they appear in Windows and some Windows apps. That's not what I really want to know. what I really want to know. This is what I wish Mike Tolkinson was here and he could answer it for us.
Exactly. He would tell us.
Yo, Mike, here's a question. Well, I'll ask. Let's tweet it out. I'll ask him.
Yeah, that's it. That's the best bet. And then when we're done, I'm going to go poke around the Edge browser and see. I'm not sure. All right. Should I hit you guys with another question to get us in this last quarter of an hour? Off of my sheet of paper here. Don't forget, brainstorming topics for AT Chat. Don't be shy. Drop them in the chat right now. And Karen and I will promise not to automatically volunteer you for it, but we may reach out to chat with you about it. Please feel free to do that. So I mentioned last week that I had gotten an email kind of out of the blue from someone who was asking for some guidance on how to help a small team deliver assistive technology services to a very large district. And so I gave her some basic ideas, and I thought, oh, I would bring this back to the town hall again. And I did find the email. That's where these questions came from. I couldn't find it last week while we were talking. And so I thought I would put to the group a couple of the bigger issues that were coming up in her email to me. One of them was, how do you spread the word about the AT process when all people want to talk to you about is knowing more tools?
Oh, can I just tell you that this is like the experience of my last 7 to 10 years in the district? I think the biggest thing is that you have to broadly toss a blanket of training and information and resources. So I trained everybody. We trained ESC department chairs. We trained OTs. We trained speech paths. We trained PTs. We trained anyone that could be sitting at that table about what the process was, and at the same time trained them about tools that they could try right away that may or may not involve us as the AT people in the district. So it was like, it was multiple meetings, sharing, meeting, having conversations, and then trying to get this screening process in place, which helped us to be able to walk through the set consideration with teams without having to actually physically be in person at all those places.
Yeah. And then, so what do you do, Alyssa, when you do all that, and then the very next day you get a message from somebody that just says, can you tell me about more apps for reading?
I refer them to my Wakelets and or Assistive Technology website, where I've got on-demand resources. So when I get a question, I am building a Wakelet, and maybe I'm building an email template that's got the same information I would share on reading applications. So when I go to have to respond for the 5th time, it's use the email template and attach the Wakelet and say, I would be happy to talk with you in more detail. Please take a second to review these materials first.
Yeah. So kind of a 1-2. It's like, we have a process. Here's some resources, and here's how those resources would fit into the process we've identified.
Yes, I mean, obviously it depends on the needs of the kid. And if a kid needs more than something I would expect a school level team to know, that's a very different situation. But when we're talking about how do our kids access Snap and Read, I will use, for example, that we have district wide as a UDL, but maybe they need specific tools that I would say are AT for them. It's, here is some overall information about Snap and Read. Here is my Wakelet about getting started with Snap and Read. And here is a video specific about using the text leveler, because that's the thing that the teacher is saying they need help with.
Right.
But I'm not spending the time going and doing the same training over and over again. It's like, here's all the resources you need. And here is that one specific thing that might answer the specific thing that kiddo needs that would make it AT and not ET or UDL.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think that the trick there with what you just described is that the time it takes us as the providers to get to that point with those resources to be ready to drop that thing on someone, that kind of message to someone, and say like, okay,
Well,
great.
right.
And so
On the AT specialist end, it is like front loading a little bit of work
right.
in the common areas you're either going to get questions or have gotten questions, so that you are not then duplicating work on the flip side. It's, did it take me a little time to get a Wakelet together with all the Snap and Read 101? Yes, but then I can embed that Wakelet in my website, and I could just refer people to the website. I take the time to send the email and answer the email because somebody's reached out. But I start at like, here are all the universally available tools. Here are the things that might be more specialized, but are kind of freely available. And then here's the things I think I saw in the chat. Somebody say tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. I'm sitting at a stoplight, so I'm not really looking at the chat. But I think to me, it's important for people to know what's universally available, starting with what's available on the platform of the computer that they're sitting at, not just here's some specialized, tool that you have to get a subscription for or paid for. Like, let's start with the stuff that's universally available in ease of access or in accessibility settings or on the Chrome OS. Like, let's start there. And again, I tried to tier them, but I know some people have done it by subject area too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're right. That becomes part of the discussion amongst your team of how you want to break that up, and, breaking it up the way Sarah just said in there, tier 1, 2, and 3, or accommodations, strategies, accommodations, modifications, whatever it might be. I think the tricky part for this person is that they are new to this position, and it is 2 people in a very large district. And so they're just fielding email and call after call saying, what is the greatest new reading app? And so there is a process, but it's getting the process in front of people, and getting people to understand that process while still giving them something that feels like it has value. And I know sometimes when in a school, if you lean into talking about process all the time, people tend to tune that out, and they're like, I don't want that. I just want this. I want a thing. Give me a thing. And so it's kind of here's a thing. And I think, Alyssa, that's a great point. What do we have? What's available already? How can I start you on a path to at least understand what some of these tools and supports are? And if they don't work for the person you're talking about, then that dovetails nicely into, this is our process, by the way. And this is how we will help you figure out what is specifically needed for that student.
Yeah, Mike, one-to-one really does that, kind of lends itself to that, especially when you've got inclusive tools, because then you're kind of going at it more universally. But when you start, and if those tools aren't working, then definitely we get the fielded, what other options. So I might try it, because we're Chromebook, I might try an alternate extension that has the same goal, but the biggest thing is the questioning, asking questions. What is the goal? What is the purpose? What barrier are you trying to remove? Is there a barrier? Like, just trying to find out from more of a coaching model than I know it all, because I don't. But how can I help you collaboratively get to this goal? And then doing some, either trial work or doing some demos, or just giving those options, and then also giving the license to say, hey, let's give this a try for a certain amount of time, and let's get some good feedback on this from the user, not our own judgments, but from the person that's actually using these tools, and let's find out, where to go from there. And that can be done individual, group, but you have to make sure when you start to get into IEP 504 that obviously it's documented, and those process. And so that's when the conversation kind of shifts from tools for all to tools for some, even though we have tools for all, and some use it that need to be documented in the IEP, even though it's available to everybody, because those specific features remove barriers, and so that shift, I think, has been helpful also, because it's like teaching someone to fish. I want to teach them to fish. I don't just want to give them the fish and go see it. And that's how I feel sometimes with those tools. They just want the tool. Like you said, just give me the tool. But I'm not going to teach, because when you don't like that, you're going to come back to me,
Right.
which is fun. But it's a bigger purpose in my mind, is to empower. Karen always says this. I want to be talked out of a job.
Right.
And I agree with that, because I want to empower people to understand this too, and to make these decisions that are inclusive and mindful and respectful of the needs of our learners first, not what's most expedient for us, which is a weird mindset shift for people, myself
It is a
included.
weird mindset for people to shift to. And you know, those are when we don't ask those questions, or when those questions were not asked, that tends to be those times where someone comes back and says, oh, that app stinks. Right. And how many times you heard that I don't like that tool, it's horrible. And that's an opportunity for us to say, well, in your instance, for this person, it may not have worked. That doesn't mean the tool is bad. It means it wasn't right. That means we need to go back to our question asking process, and mostly our AT process. That's a great lead into a discussion about your process, and about consideration and what that looks like. Because they're serving it up to you on a platter at that point, and they say something stinks. Go ahead, Karen. I saw you pop back on.
No, just listening. Well, when they say something stinks, they're usually talking from their own perspective, and we have to help them to realize that we need to offer choices and help our learners identify what works best for them, depending on what it is they want to be able to do. And, you know, I've heard it all the time. Oh, they don't like the voice, for example, with text to speech. And I'm like, okay, you may not like it, but
Right.
let's help them find a voice that will work better for them. I mean, I know if that's the only way that they can do it, oftentimes when they say, oh, they don't like the voice, then they will end up reading the content to the learner. And how is that promoting independence? We want to help our learners identify the voice that works best for them, whether human narration or text to speech.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And just
ethical responsibility.
yeah, and
believe.
in my non-scientific approach to this, in the handful of times I can think about where someone has said, a staff member, that voice is horrible, we can't use that. I can think back to a handful of those same students who we were using it for, who never had an issue with that voice.
Right. Yeah.
And no
It's an
one
adult
had asked
problem,
them.
not a kid problem. I don't know how
Yeah.
many times I've said it. It's an adult problem, not a child problem.
Yeah.
Right.
I really, I booted people.
Yeah. I mean, there's,
I'm sorry, you can go.
yeah, I mean, there's points, and you know, I think there's probably a nicer way to do this. And so this again is a downfall that I have sometimes, where I will say to them, this is not really about you right now.
Right.
Because it's not, you know, I think you say it with a smile, it's probably not so bad. But it's not. I think that's always a struggle that people, I wouldn't use that, is when I hear somebody say that, a teacher or someone else, I won't use that. Great, don't use it. I'm not here for you. I'm here for this student. So do whatever you want. I'm not asking you your choice.
Yeah, when I put in the chat, that's what I say to people. When I'm here to assess you, then I'll be concerned about what it is that you like. I'll remember what you just told me.
That's right. When I'm here for your assessment.
Oh, that's such a Kellyism.
Yeah, that's good. I'm going to say that instead of
Been
my
saying that for
anger.
35 years, I think.
I'm going to change the way I say it and be nicer now. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So true. All right, I got
Well,
through a
we
handful of
also
my
did-
questions.
Clearly, we've all encountered it because everybody has their
Exactly.
go-to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, it's 1 o'clock or whatever. It's the top of the hour wherever you live. I don't know where you live. So another excellent week. We will not be here next week because it's Labor Day, right? Someone help me with the calendar, right?
Correct.
You can come here, but I'm not going to be here. And you're welcome to just log into Zoom somewhere. So we'll see you in 2 weeks. Hopefully you'll join us for AT Chat. Starts this Wednesday at 8 o'clock Eastern. It'll be kind of our welcome back chat, I'm sure. Oh, Kelly's given us reminders for Closing the Gap. Anybody who's a presenter at Closing the Gap, your recordings are due September 1st, which sounds very close to today. I don't know if that's tomorrow or the next day. It just sounds close. I don't know how many days are in August. So get those on. All right, everybody. Well, we'll see you in 2 weeks then. enjoy your day off and good luck and have a good rest of the week. See you later.